because
Yeah,
quite frank, I'm probably better if I have a little bit of shade on me. There's, because seriously, because no one wants to see a full blown kind of like, there's all my international bags of tiredness under my eyes, or there's my half shaven face. Right. That doesn't need to be done. So
it's not even GVDS time yet. So.
no, it's not.
You're
I mean,
still good. You're still
I
looking
have to
good.
do, yeah, that's why I'm doing it around Halloween. So I can go full ghoul, and I won't have to put on
Oh,
much makeup beyond white and kind of do it that way. Or just put a sheet over my head so people can't see how completely exhausted I am. But we'll see. Anyway, if you're watching us banter here on YouTube, hello. Nice to see you. Whether you're watching live or recording, appreciate you coming by and checking us out. This video is going to start getting into Virtual Design Sprint Week, so the actual week of the GVDS, and the kinds of things you can expect, the things that happen. This is to give you a little bit of a preview before you actually get into your design sprint week. Now, Sandy Lam and I, especially Sandy Lam, has been through a ton of virtual sprints. So our experience, collective experience, is going to be about what we've experienced and seen. And in a way, it's going to also project into what may happen in GVDS-5. So does that sound about right, Sandy?
yes, sounds right.
And for the record,
I
go
think we
ahead.
will be giving different perspective because I'm more from the participant side of things, and then you are going to talk more about how you see from the higher level. That's how I would imagine it.
Okay, so clouds and dirt kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm the dirt.
Something like that, or the where the rubber meets the road kind of thing. So I'm like, whatever. I'll make bad analogies. By the way, you this is for the record. I'm the first person to actually notice like Sandy's new setup with a brand new camera and everything else. So take notice of this background. How it's slightly fuzzied, and then she's focused in the front. It's going to be like the standard you're going to see most virtual design sprint participants do. So
exactly. If you don't have this kind of setup, don't come to GVDS.
that's exactly it. In fact, in the notes, please, Sandy, when you get done, just send me a list of all your equipment, and then that'll be like a welcoming kit. You know, they have the sprint starter kit that you get your dots and your thing. Well, this is your tech kit that you have to actually get. That's going to make an investment into, because then it goes past the event. You can use it for all sorts of things, podcasts, presentations.
This is recorded, so prepare that people are going to come and ask for that.
Yes, they will. I encourage that. Ask Sandy about her tech setup. She's John Zaratsky actually called her and asked and took some notes from like how she he didn't. I'm just kidding. All right. I was going off. Okay, so on the screen, I'm sharing what to expect on a Monday. So like we can start from left to right. In terms of the first day of a virtual design sprint with activities, there's typically certain ones that happen every single time. Though this may slightly change because I've been seeing some people that have actually are going full bore on changing the makeup of this. But traditionally, it is the long-term goal, sprint questions, how might we? And the one thing that's also usually coming to here is making a map. So you make a map of what the issue is, and then you usually do a bit of subject matter expert interviews, and then you do a target picking, right? That's typically what happens.
Yeah, in the actual traditional design sprint. But I will have to say that from all my experience so far, we have not been able to make the map on Monday.
Yes, and so I'm going to do a little bit of coloring here. So there's a good chance that make a map is not going to be part of the equation when it comes to GVDS-5. There's a reason for that. Because this is going to be either replaced by one of two things. So I'm going to go over here to the side. So I mean, there's a case to be made about user experience mapping, which is a little different. But what that does is it tends to evoke empathy and kind of perspective from the subject matter expert interviews on how this map actually works. So usually the SME interviews and the how might we's that are generated from it kind of color the map and point out particular things that where the team is thinking of the path that you would take from beginning to end in terms of like the optimal experience. User experience mapping kind of just makes the how might we the map. And that, or it's the subject matter expert interviews the map, and that it's a direct correlation between how people see what's currently happening now. So in a way, it takes some jobs to be done also, but it basically maps out exactly what people are talking about. So you're interpreting what people say. The other thing that may occur is fractal pathing. This is different in the sense that it is a direct change from the map itself. So I'm going to put this over here, where instead of going into a nuanced structure where it's like beginning and end, and there's all these like learning, experiencing, discover, and the different methods that have been shown in the past, fractal mapping is the same as I'll put it fractal pathing. It's probably easier because that's how I know it to be. Fractal pathing is essentially you start from one particular point and then you have an end point. And then it's a free flow of your own thoughts in terms of just basically going through all the steps you possibly can think of and how that could basically go. Some people are very conservative about that. Some are very like all over the place. They get into all the little nuances. But usually when you have that entire map out between 6 or 7 people, you can start to see where there are similarities, not only in the direct path, but also the side paths. And to kind of like your mapping exercise, Sandy, that you kind of introduced, it's kind of like layering the one on top of one another, and you kind of see the similarities, and you have a pretty clear distinction on which direction to go.
Okay.
And it's my consultant. You want to say hi to Sandy?
Hi.
And if you hit Daddy, we're gonna have to tush you. Okay, so no fists on a live broadcast. Got it? You want to do, what do you want to do? You want to do Minecraft or you want to do Roblox?
Roblox.
Okay, you got what? You got some time. Better hurry. Go.
Let me go.
All right, go. This is love. You can tell. Okay.
Definitely a lot.
Yes. So I guess the overall point is that without getting too far in the weeds, the activities for Monday, these are the traditional ones. There's going to be a set recipe that we'll have in the GVDS, but what we'll typically do is we're going to allow people to kind of like choose from particular activities and try those out. No, seriously, stop. Do what you want to do, otherwise it goes away. Okay? Bye. Do you have anything to say about this, Sandy?
Yeah, maybe I can also chime in about the expert interviews. So from my experience, like we actually do the expert interviews before the design sprints happen. It's just kind of a way to save time, and also it allows people to have this exercise as an offline exercise instead. So before the Monday, actually we would probably interview the like 5 people or 3 just to get some. I think 3 is probably the better number. Yeah, so we will interview them first, and then people will be recording. People will be listening to the recording, and then on Monday, then we just have to do the clustering or affinity diagram. That's another wording for it. Yeah. So, and also wanted to mention that from my experience, one thing that I would say, like kind of like I don't know if it fits to that or the mistake thing. One of the mistakes that we have done in the past was trying to interview too many people. Then you end up with like hundreds of how my reads. If people are doing their homework properly, then it takes like hours to actually try to do an affinity diagram for those how my reads that your team has populated before the Monday. And it becomes like very, very tiring just for the first exercise that as a sprint starts.
You want to keep the interviews to how many people you would say?
I would say 3 is probably like a nice number. 5 would be like the max I would go. Otherwise it would be just way too many harmonies. Also depends on the team size, right? So it multiplies up if you have 5 interview and then have 10 team members, which won't be happening this time. But if you had, then it would be like 50 stickies. If only one person doing one sticky, then you will have 50 stickies. But if they do like 5 stickies, then you multiply it, right? So that can lead to many stickies that you have to sort out in the end.
Yeah. And that can be really time consuming, especially if people are not used to sorting or you're just trying to get through all of them. You may feel like you've gotten some information, but more often than not, I think you're right. Leaving them to 3 or 5 would be would be just
And
as
it's
well.
probably not the best way to start the sprint, just sorting for hours there.
Instead of sorting digital cards for hours, it kind of deflates the entire thing, right? Yeah. So probably 3 people. I agree with that.
But if that happens, I would say there's also one trick that I've learned from you is actually if there's like too many how might we's that we have to sort out, then you can break down the group into 2 or 3 and then assign each group to sort out a group of stickies, and then you kind of combine them in the end. That could be a way.
Yeah, like they yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can do that. You just basically like divide and conquer for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's typically what happens in a structure for Monday. The interactions that you have are twofold. First is with your tools. Second was with your team. I put 2 notes here about you're going to be learning how to work with Mural, Zoom, Discord, other tools that are part of what the team has worked out previous to your sprint week. In the kickoff, you'll have discussions around what you're going to be working with, and a lot of that will be what you're used to. What's new to you and what isn't. You might find that people are perfectly fine using Google Slides to do the prototype with if it's a presentation, but it requires that short discussion around what people are kind of comfortable with and what they want to try, so that you don't go out too far out in a limb with a tool and feel like you're the only person that's using it, where the team is ambivalent or they don't care one way or another, which is not a good place to be, because then you feel like you're kind of pulling the cart by yourself. So it's important. You'll have that conversation before, but it'll be going through the motions on all those tools, especially on Monday will be probably the first time, could be the first time you're working with them, but there's that. And then all throughout the day on Monday, especially if you're new to this, ask questions, ask for help. It's extremely important that you don't stay silent if you don't know what's going on. You really want to be able to speak up if there's something that even if on its face doesn't seem obvious, do ask. The facilitator, more often than not, or other team members will probably either be learning along with you or have treaded down the path that you are and say like, oh yeah, well, all I have to do is consider this. And there's that.
Yeah.
And you gets used to asynchronous communication.
Yeah. I found that a lot of people, this is almost like a new thing to them. They are very used to, majority of people are very used to online communication, but when it comes down to async communication, sometimes it gets really tricky. And I think like async communication is almost like a different mindset, because you kind of have to put the question in or your whatever comments in, and then you have to wait, and then it's very easy to lose the patience of that and then get frustrated. So yeah, just have to get used to that in a way, and try to write in a simple format. I think is really the key of any kind of asynchronous communication. Don't try to write paragraphs for something that nobody's ever going to read it.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny because sometimes there's that need to be complete, to have talk about as much detail as possible, and you really don't. Because more often than not, people have that 8-second attention span where it's just like, okay, what do I need to know? I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like a small dog when they're trying to pay attention to something and then they go in a different direction. Yeah. So time management is a big one. Making sure that you bring stuff offline when possible was one of yours. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Is like when pretty much reserving your online time for particular activities like decisions, brief discussions to share perspective, but really trying to use that online time as oxygen, whereas that's where your team can really dynamically communicate, but you don't necessarily want to just fill that up with like exploration exercises that can eat away at it pretty fast, to our point about the how might we interviews before.
Yeah. Basically, I guess the rule of thumb is that if it's almost like a note-taking thing, you can always bring that offline. But of course, you have to see if it's worth bringing it offline and then come back online again.
And you also wrote here having a bit of a cooling down time after the sprint, the online.
Yeah, that's pretty much from my experience. I don't know about really participating. I think that's a little bit different. But when facilitating, it's actually super tiring, even just for 2 hours of online time. It's a lot of focus, and management, time manage expectation, manage the team dynamics and everything. So I often find that after that I need a little bit of cooling time, like kind of just relax a little bit, take some
Mm-hmm.
deep breaths, yeah, whatever
Drink
it takes to.
heavily for some people.
That could work for some, but I don't even drink alcohol, so I could drink a tea or
Well,
something.
I wasn't implying anything. There's other people that just basically like fall flat on their face on a bed and just sit there and just kind of, some people get migraines from staring at screens too long, so I can understand that.
Yeah. And also like this kind of Bluetooth headphone, if you wear them too long, actually gives you a headache as well.
Yeah, same thing with these AirPods. If you wear them so long, you feel like they're jewelry. Once you take them off, you feel like they should be back in there. That weird feeling you have when you have a ring that you're supposed to have in your finger, and it's weird all the time. You take it off, and you're like, "Where is that?" It feels weird. Same thing. You don't ever want to be in that space.
Yeah.
So one thing that really helps for your offline time when you're doing asynchronous work and you're not in front of anybody, but you're communicating over Discord or Slack or something, is to kind of have a short to-do list that you make for yourself. Things that are kind of action items that that you kind of need to take care of between one day and the next. Sometimes it helps to broadcast that and so let people know what you're kind of like concentrating on in your kind of group chat on WhatsApp or whatever. You don't need to do that, but that helps kind of give you an idea of what you're on the hook for, but also what you need to concentrate on and get done. Too often you can just kind of disconnect, get into something else, drink heavily, whatever. And you basically go the next day and you're like, yeah, so where do we leave off? And you've totally kind of forgot that as a researcher, as a designer, you're kind of prepping for what's happening later on in the week. So a short one, it doesn't need to be extensive. If it's more than 5 items, it's a bit too long. I'd say keep it short and then just try to do what you can.
Yeah, I see that you also have written that you serve your online time 2 hours to this decisions and brief discussion.
Yeah. So
This is. Yeah,
go ahead.
Okay. I also wanted to say we serve offline time as well, because sometimes you don't want to wait the stuff until the last minute, because that's the whole point of participating in this event. You're coming to learn. If you're just kind of like having like a mindset of just getting it done for the sake of getting it done, you're not going to learn that much. So
yeah. Depending on your role, primarily your role and interest. Some people can go the extra mile for certain things. But yeah, that's probably
we paid for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're putting money into this now. Just make the investment and really understand the nuances of it. Yep, and that's variable depending on what you want to do and what your role is. Prepping for the next day, which was kind of incorporated into the to-do list, is kind of sets in there where you recap and set expectations. Now, when you wrote this, were you thinking towards the end of the session or just at the end of the day, kind of for a facilitator recapping on what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's more facilitator. So what I found is like it's very important that by the end of each day, actually not just Monday, that do a recap, and actually do the recap right after that sprint. Don't wait too long. I mean, wait for an hour is okay, but don't wait too long. And also make sure you send all the links or instructions to people to tell them how to do the offline exercise, and if they need help, how can they reach you or whoever.
Yeah. I would also say that one of the best vehicles for this is email and not Slack, because email is pretty easy to kind of do from multiple devices. And if you cliff note it so that you limit yourself to how long you're going to actually get into it, then that's perfect. Some people have really gone out and done tons of emojis on there. So like, we did this emoji, we did this emoji, and they're fantastic and colorful. And that really shows the personality of the facilitator. But make sure that you're getting the depth and breadth of the session kind of captured, and then what's to be in there, and that you don't spend a ton of time on that. In fact, it might be better if the facilitator doesn't actually recap it at all and it's somebody else. So
that would be cool too.
So for Each team member, how about this? Each team member takes a turn at recapping the session, and I think setting expectations could be a different one via email. And then we'll go down here, put this here, link.
I have a little bit of different opinions via email because I'm just someone who's terrible with emails.
Okay.
So what I typically would do, because I think everyone is different, I would actually do it in multiple channel. I guess one of the thing is don't be afraid to over communicate, because chances that they will not see everything that you are communicating.
That's true. But I'll play the devil's advocate and say, well, Sandy, I don't like having multiple messages coming through on multiple channels. I don't know what's updated and which one is the right one to listen to. So I just like to have one thing that I know I have to watch.
Yeah,
or look
and
at.
I guess that's also one thing that comes handy when we do the team canvas, that we set the rules to say, okay, which are our communication channels. Is it okay to send them to all? Some people like to also use WhatsApp and stuff. Yeah, I guess it's just a matter of aligning the team and agreeing on something.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Setting that expectation way up in advance during the kickoff, during the team canvas session. Mistakes and false starts, you're going to have them. They are going to happen. That's just especially on Monday. The most common ones are technical issues with connections, things not working as well. Can't load Mural, something else is just not connecting. So I think giving everybody like kind of a bit of a slack when it comes to those experiences, and just have people work through them or record the sessions or basically make amends on what's happening. Asynchronous is a bit easier, so you don't have as much like problems with this, but when you're trying to do online sessions all at the same time, that tends to creep up a bit.
Or not having the proper video set up.
Yes, which does happen. But most laptops do have some sort of modern camera device installed in them, so you don't have to have a sophisticated high-end setup like Sandy Lam does now. You can basically have a smart one like I'm using, where my microphone is somewhat updated, and I'm just using my MacBook Pro to display. So your mileage may vary on what your question of quality is, but yeah, there's that. But so far, Sandy's it's primo setup, so you're good. Misunderstandings and conflict resolution. This is a big one because you are meeting people for the first time, and there are going to be conflicts of communication styles and interest. I've already seen them crop up a little bit in GVDS-5. Yes. That's why the code of conduct was written, because of what happened in 4, and a couple of people just basically exited the event altogether because of some real issues with how people were kind of handling either facilitation or pushing an agenda. And also exclusivity was an issue last time, where people were not being able to participate in sprints because they had a limit to how many people were there, like an arbitrary limit that was set by not being by someone else. So when it comes to kind of finding out what people expect to get from the event and then having a different experience, that's one thing. But also within the team and working itself, it falls back to what you had said before about those social norms and the rules of engagement and what people agree to. There are some things that are event wide, but it's always good to basically get on the same page together about what's going to work in terms of when somebody has an issue, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then now the other thing you put here is the facilitator not acting confident.
Yeah, emphasizing on the word acting, because I know that facilitator can feel not confident, but I think the trick is try to act like you are confident either way, because that actually makes the team's, it brings the motivation and the team's engagement down if you're not acting confident enough. That's just from my experience. Of course, like everyone is learning, so. But at the same time, even if you don't know, you act like you do, it's kind of like, it just gives the confidence for the team to actually follow through the exercise with you. That's how I've been feeling.
I also put there what you do as a facilitator is amplified and sets the tone. So generally speaking, you're going to capture and hold the not only the pace and the momentum, but the overall morale and the feeling of the group. So a lot of it's going to stem from your personality and your approach. You have to be very aware of that. If you aren't, and you kind of just do what you instinctively feel is right, and you don't really square the circle and go back and check with people to see how they're feeling, you may lose folks. And that's happened where after people give you the prior benefit of the doubt on Monday, then they start to question on Tuesday. And then usually if those questions aren't answered Wednesday, they're out, you don't see them. So it happens, but you definitely have to be mindful of the fact that you as leading the charge, people are going to take a lot of their cues from you. So it's okay to kind of screw up a little bit on Monday, but start asking questions or talk to people like us that are senior facilitators and know the space, or just start to chat up and go ahead.
Yeah, I think also it's the fact that it's almost like only you know that you don't know. So sometimes you just have to just do it, and then actually it's not a big deal. Like the participant, they wouldn't really think too much about it. Yeah, that's just my experience.
Yeah. So they are going to happen. Not everyone's going to be 100%. I mean, my history with this has been, there's a long road of misery and false starts there. It's going to happen when you organize this stuff, especially when you try doing sessions. So it happens to everybody. No one's perfect. So do speak up. Another thing you will experience, especially if this is new to you, is overwhelm. You're going to feel like you're drinking from the fire hose. There's going to be a lot of information to take in. Maybe this process is new for you. You're suddenly going to feel like you're going through the motions, but not really gaining a grasp or an understanding. The first thing I'd say is to make sure that your expectations are in check and that you prioritize your time. Don't feel like you have to cover all the bases. Do what you can in the time that you've allotted in your schedule for this event, and then prioritize your time appropriately to other things. And this is especially true for designers with prototypes in the prototyping process. You don't want to suddenly say, oh, I have to do this in 24 hours and I have to get something out the door. That's not what you should be doing. I know that there's been other developers and designers in previous events where they feel like everything is on them to basically produce something that they can test. And I think that's my fault in not directing the entire team in a way that's more constructive and collaborative in that fashion. So no matter what your role, even if it's not a designer, if it's a researcher and everything else, make sure that you compartmentalize your engagement both offline and online, and you make sure those expectations you have are in check. The other thing also is to give yourself a break if you're a beginner. I'd say there are no accidents. There's just experiences. So unless you go on Tourette's syndrome and start cussing like crazy, or just throw your microphone down, or something really out of the ordinary happens, more often than not, it's recoverable and no one's going to really remember it too much. Just know that you basically have to go through the motions, and eventually you'll start to pick up. I mean, Sandy in what was it, the second or third one, basically went through 5 different virtual design sprints back to back. And like, probably, when did you start feeling like you were getting the hang of it? Was after the second one, the third one? Where did you feel like you were starting to get it?
I think after the second one, I got pretty confident that I can do it. Not saying that I can do a really good job, but at least, because when I first came, actually, I felt that I couldn't even do it. Yeah. But I think after the second,
Even my first time with it, when I was experimenting with a bunch of UX designers and developers and program managers, I was really going through the motions in the book and just trying to figure out what made sense and what didn't. So I was learning as I was going, and people were learning with me. So when they had these nuanced questions about, why isn't research part of this? Why don't you do UCD with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just doing my book. And I really didn't have an answer. Now that I've been at this for about 2 years plus, I kind of know, but yeah, in the beginning, you're just going to, hopefully you'll have other people that you can kind of attach yourself to within the session. And the last questions, you'll know who to go to, like Andy Davis. If you're on Andy Davis's team this time around, he's very good at kind of explaining things. Same with Lisa, same with other folks. Alex is really good at this. So depending on who's senior in your team, you have that outlet. But if you don't have somebody senior, you'll have a lot of help through a lot of the materials that we're creating, and hopefully through like the step-by-step stuff that you'll see when you actually pick an activity that you want to try.
Yeah. And actually there will be a lot of different templates, like not just Miro templates, like even those recap messages, like we also have some templates. Like if you don't know where to get them, you can reach out to me anytime. Yeah, because we have done all this stuff in the past, so you don't actually need to create anything from scratch. I mean, you could, but you don't have to. Yeah.
I mean, I'm literally taking the work that you've already done, Sandy, and I'm just it's almost like I'm putting a new coat of paint on it, but I'm maybe like doing some, we've updated this with some new technology, and we're actually now it can actually block the sun, but it's still the retrofit of the GVDS-3, so you still have that stylistic choice. It's almost like I'm doing HGTV with the whole thing. So when I actually come out with the templates, it's still going to be your work, but it's going to be slightly updated, maybe modular, but it's going to just take on a different approach. So it's still going to be there. So other things here, it's like, so don't freak out when you're not seeing your offline exercises being turned in by other people.
That is totally speaking just from my experience. I do freak out a lot for stuff like this as a facilitator. So when I like say, okay, before the sprint, please turn in your how might we so we can sort them out on Monday. And then often it's like, okay, Sunday, my evening, I still don't see anything. Then I start freaking out. Okay, what do I do? Do I need to write all the how my reads myself or what? From my experience, I have learned also from Robert's advice, don't freak out. Actually, they will be turning in. It's not the end of the world. So it's just, yeah, I tend to freak out on those things.
Yeah, it's, and I'm really going to try to drive this home this time around, is that the challenge or idea is not the focal point. It may be it may be the focus of your team in terms of moving it through, but what you're really trying to take away from this is the process and understanding how to do it, how to go through the steps, what steps need to be taken. Then you can do all sorts of challenges and ideas on what you want to do. But the thing you should take away from this event, first and foremost, top line, top shelf, is how this process works from a very baseline, the virtual design sprint version of it, and how you can take that base process and customize it for your particular situation or what you want to do. That's the event goal of this. My personal goal is to elevate, like I do with Sandy Lam, and saying, look, if you want top-notch service design templates and other work that people do, and you want to see an example of somebody that has historically showcased what she knows, then I'm one of her biggest fans. So it just depends on what it just depends on who we're talking about. But those are the two focuses: learning about the virtual design sprint process and elevating professionals so that they become the best versions of themselves for opportunities, discussions, and other things that come up in the future. And you're right. You don't have to miss any communication from me, because I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that. I'll try everything and anything to say, like, I respond within 24 hours to any email or tweet usually that comes my way, just to make sure I'm on top of things.
Not exactly what I mean, but this is just something that I hear often, that especially the newcomers, they feel very overwhelmed, or they feel that they're not ready because they were not really reading all the emails or all the messages that you have been posting on Slack or something, and then they freak out and say, okay, I don't know what to do. I missed all the emails. I have not read them yet. I have not watched all the videos, all the training. I feel not ready. I just want to make the point that actually it's okay if you miss some of them. We actually try to over communicate a lot. So it's meant for you to miss something, in a way. So yeah.
And the good thing is that all of this is usually recorded or referenced. So if you do miss something, after the event is over, you can come back to it and it's there. So yeah, you're right. You don't have to worry about missing stuff, because usually 75% of the stuff is me just kind of going, and then the other 25% that you really need to know about, more or less, it's kind of built in when you start getting into the process. So yeah. And guess what, Sandy? We actually did just Monday today.
Yeah, I realized that too.
So this is actually, we thought we were going to cover 2 days offline when we were saying, oh, half an hour to 2 days, but nope, we went kind of deep into just 1 day. So it looks like this is going to be like a per day session. And then we just cut it off where need be. So, Okay.
That's
So
okay.
do you have anything else to add on anything we put here at Sandy?
No, I think I have covered most of the things that I wanted to talk about.
Okay. So as an overview for Monday, you want to think of and be mindful of the activities that you're going to do and the variations of those. We'll get into those when we get closer to the event. The interactions that you have both with the tools and with people, being mindful of time management and understanding what your offline and online time is used for, prepping for the next day so that you're kind of prepared for what's to come, understanding that mistakes and false starts are part of the entire equation and that you should understand what your role means and how it tends to influence others. And then to also be mindful of overwhelm, meaning that there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of new things coming at you, especially if you're a beginner, and that's okay. You don't need to know it all or experience it all. It's just going to take some time to eventually gel. And when it does, you'll feel better about it. So that's a brief overview of what we talked about. You'll be back probably, I think Andy's going to come by and talk about Tuesday. And so we might actually on Friday talk about Wednesday, but we'll see. I can basically recap for him when we talk what we talked about for Tuesday. And then depending on how things shake out tomorrow, we'll close out the next 2 days, which is Wednesday and Thursday, and leave room for retrospective for a different time.
Sounds good.
So Sandy, thank you very much for being part of this and having a conversation with me as always. These are like these remotely interesting nuggets. It's like these
I know.
So cool. Okay. So from all of us here in Germany and in Dallas, we appreciate you watching this, and hopefully you'll tune in and watch the next video, whether it's recorded or live, and we will talk to you all later. Okay. And I'll stop the live stream, Sandy, so stay on and we'll say bye real fast. But everybody else, bye.